So, um, so welcome, guys. Again, just in case you haven't hear a little bit about my background and didn't hear my intro. My name's Matthew Venne. Born and raised in the Northern Virginia area. I went to James Madison University, where I got my degree in physics and in French. And I've been working in the IT field and the cloud space for just under 10 years. I have a background as a Windows and SharePoint administrator. Then I kind of broke into the cloud world halfway through my career, and then just been working with a company called stackArmor here for the last year and a half, helping with some of their, really helps drive some of like the security implementation practices with the AWS. So, and what I currently right now, I'm a senior solutions architect. And stackArmor is a kind of a small company. As you'll see, I'll kind of touch on some of the stuff that we do. So I have to wear a lot of hats, but the main hats I will wear are mainly into the design and implementation of all of our of all the infrastructure in AWS for all of our customers. So we're talking about deploying their CI/CD pipelines, their infrastructure as code with CloudFormation, setting up their networking, their EC2 instances, all the patching and the compliance, the audit trails, automating all the implementation of that. That's what I design. I design and actually do that. So if there's any hands-on people here, that's what I do. I'm not saying I know everything in the world. I mean, was it Aristotle or Socrates? The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. So it's definitely one of those things. It's a very complex world, but I'd be glad to answer any questions here at the end in terms of how we do some things to help companies get ATOs. And I'll definitely be referring to some other workshops that CL will be having, and my company's actually running another workshop here at the in 2 weeks about more information about the FedRAMP process and about how we do. And our CEO will actually be running that. So he's much more knowledgeable about the compliance world of stuff. So like I said, I'm more the gearhead that they kind of throw into the world of in implementing stuff. So stackArmor is we've been in business for about 4 years now. We're an advanced consulting partner with AWS. That basically just means that we have we have a lot of that's our bread and butter. We have a lot of people on our team that are actually AWS certified. I'm currently AWS certified, 5 different certifications with AWS. Not that it's kind of good. It's because it helps with these partner statuses, but at the end of the day, it's just passing a test. It's can you actually do the real work? That's what I've always said. We are one of the good things about stackArmor is last year AWS started a new competency program where they identified a few companies that had that exhibited a track record in certain areas of implementation and design and using their AWS services. And we were actually one of 8 companies selected, and we were given the security competency. And I believe we were the only company. There might have been another one that got the security competency. Out of all the companies in the world, this little small company based out of Tysons, Virginia, was recognized directly by Amazon for their security competency, which I think speaks a lot of volumes about our track record and what we've done. So what we mainly do though is, like as you can see from the slide on the right, is we do a lot of we design AWS architecture, migration, designing security best practices, penetration and vulnerability assessments, continuous monitoring, and meeting a lot of those requirements. And that last one is what we're going to be kind of talking about a little bit today too, the compliance documentation, because what you'll soon find out is, and anybody who's been through an ATO process, the implementation is maybe about 20% of it. It's not that difficult, especially if you're doing things with CloudFormation to spin things up and do things in a compliant way. That's pretty cookie cutter. It's the documentation and they're writing the SSPs, this system security plan, that talks about all the different controls of a FedRAMP environment and documenting how you've implemented them. And that is where, that's where I would say like our bread and butter is. We have a really strong compliance team with years of tons of experience in the FedRAMP world and in the NIST, FISMA. We've done PCI compliance, IRS 1075, HIPAA, a little bit of everything. We've got an excellent compliance team that has a ton of experience in a lot of those different areas. So what we're going to be talking about today is stackArmor. We actually have a and this is a little bit of a marketing pitch here, so I apologize, but I'm a gearhead, so it won't come off as too much like a marketing pitch. What stackArmor, AWS has a lot of what they call, they have a marketplace for different products, like whether it's like different VMs, or what they call their EC2 instances, where certain companies can say, hey, if you want my product, you don't have to sign you could just click this button in the AWS console, and we have a vetted image of that'll launch and with that pre-configured into your environment. Like let's say, was it Nikia was talking about, was it Nikia or Madison? I apologize if I got it wrong. Was talking about the firewalls. Like if you have a Palo Alto next-gen firewall, like if you don't have to go through the procurement process. You can just literally go through the AWS console, click a button, and you can deploy a VM-based firewall in your AWS cloud, just like that. So there's a lot of different solutions available in the AWS marketplace. They have other services as well, like other marketplaces as well, for like the web application firewall. But what we're going to be talking about is their consulting marketplace, where you can stackArmor, we actually have an offering called our ThreatAlert ATO acceleration platform, where you can, you can basically click on here. It's been the solution's been vetted by AWS. It meets their best practices and standards, where you come in and say, we would like this. We're looking for a FedRAMP ATO in the AWS, and you have a direct line to us through AWS, and you hire us as consultants, and we go in and we go to work for you. I'll kind of explain some of that process here, but we've helped a bunch of different companies with the ATO process, and just a little bit on the ATO process and what FedRAMP is, just for those who aren't familiar. If you have a piece of software, let's say you're anytime you want to sell some software to the federal government, it has to be vetted and it has to be done in a secure manner. And back, I believe, I can't remember the exact year, but maybe less than 10 years ago, they had the FISMA guidelines the FISMA guidelines were just for any federal system, but then they said, okay, well, now everybody's going into the cloud, and there's what they call platforms as service, infrastructure as service, and software as service. It's like, how do we know which providers are doing things right, can meet the federal guidelines for security implementation? And that's what FedRAMP is. It's the Federal Risk Assessment Management. No, it's not. I forget. Again, I can't remember. I think it's program. It might be risk and mitigation program. But essentially is the federal government has put together a lot of standards. It says they have a lot of different controls at different levels. They say, okay, if you want to have a system that's built somewhere, you want to sell it to the federal government for it to be used, whether it's like Salesforce. Like Salesforce had to go through an ATO process. AWS, like they themselves have to go through the FedRAMP process. Like out of all like the hundreds of services available in AWS, not all of them are FedRAMP approved. So that's a whole nother thing. Like a lot of the core ones are like EC2, IAM, VPC, S3. A lot of the major ones are, and they are getting better. And there's more and more released every single day about them. But like generally speaking, if you're going for a FedRAMP ATO, you're only allowed to use those pre-approved services because the federal government has done their due diligence and said, we've looked behind the curtain. We know that these services, and we've checked out the data centers and everything. We understand how this is set up, and it's secure, and we understand, and that therefore it has been authorized for federal consumption. And that's what ATO stands for. It stands for authority to operate. So they've been given the authority to operate with these different services. So that's certain. So let's say we like one of our clients is a educational company. They have education software that they are looking to partner with the Department of Education on offering, and So they went to AWS. AWS said, "Hey, we know a company that helps with this. That helps with the ATO process." And so we went to work for them. We had a consulting partnership with them, and we deployed their services and their in AWS. We helped them with the documentation of how everything was set up, and they're currently going through the assessment phase now. Like that's just one. I mean, we have I think 7 or 8. Companies right now that are going through different levels of FedRAMP. So there's different levels of FedRAMP. There's like a low, which is, and it all depends on what you're ultimately looking to accomplish and what, it depends. There's a lot of variables about what level of authorization you get. There's low, which is 125 different controls that you have to meet. There's moderate, which is where most systems kind of line up. That's 325 different controls. And then there's FedRAMP High, which is 421 different levels of controls, where you have to go through and say it's. And I did a talk class a couple of weeks ago about this in terms of how we're doing this with best practices with identity management. And it's you have to document the controls. It's like how are you controlling like access to your systems? How are you controlling like session timeouts, like how long people can have access to every time somebody authenticates and logs into your system. How long do they have before they have to re-authenticate, stuff like that. Or, how are you configuring backups, the physical servers? How are you handling the security to those? And those are all things that you have to be documenting and show within your system security plan, your SSP. And so, those are the levels of control. So for the most part, I'll be talking about moderate, because that's what most of our programs go for, most of our customers go for. But we do some work with the moderate level as well, and also we're kind of branching into this new world of the CMMC. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that. CMMC is essentially the DFARS, like the DoD's version of FedRAMP. It's a brand new program that just got launched. So while DoD before, they had like IL4, the impact levels that kind of dictated their different levels of security implementation. Like CMMC is effectively like the new version of that for the cloud and for a lot of federal contractors that are looking to try to get validated. It's a lot of overlap with FedRAMP, but it's a totally different form of it's a totally different form of compliance, a different level of compliance. So but what I feel is like the bread and butter of our ATO solution is, and where a lot of customers bang their heads up on is, like they're trying to. Their boss comes to them and says, "Hey, we have all this software right here. We want to deliver this to the federal government. Our current data center does not meet does not meet compliance standards to sell to the government. Why don't let's just relaunch a new environment in AWS, some people do Google, some people do Azure, but let's just say like our company, we primarily work with well, not primarily, only work with AWS. That's just what we don't work with Azure or Google at this time. And they said we want to launch our whole platform in AWS and start to sell to the federal government. And it's like, and then when they start seeing the 325 different controls that they have to implement, they're like, oh boy, how do we, like, they're like, how do you like, is there a solution out there that can, handle the monitoring, or like the security and event, like the SIEMs, the security incident and event manager? Is there a, what do we do for identity management? What are we doing for POAM tracking? What do we do for, like, what solutions out there? Then, and here's the bit, like, how do you harden your systems? Like, now that you've launched all your VMs, what's the best way to harden them? What levels do you harden to? And then the other fun one, and if anybody's, the second I say it, if you've ever dealt with it before, you're going to roll your eyes and vomit. FIPS 140-2. Like if you've making sure that all your systems meet FIPS 140-2 validation, like, which not every system in there has a FIPS certificate. So it's like, so what stackArmor has done is we've been through the minefield with a lot of different companies. We know which tools work and can meet that meet all the requirements, and we have experience implementing them, like the different tools in the environment. And so we'll go to work and deliver our security stack and help implement your entire environment in the AWS and deploy all these services for you, and even help with some of your application integration with everything. Just and also, by the way, we'll help with that, and then we'll also help with the like all the documentation and everything, because and that's why we save companies 40% on time and cost. Like, I'm not going to tell you that we're going to save that. I'm not going to tell you that we're going to help you get an ATO tomorrow. It's still, even if we started today, it's probably 9 months, maybe 12-month process, maybe longer, depending on what's going on. But we take away a lot of the headaches and a lot of the, like, say, hey, we know this works. We know this will get past the auditors. This is what the auditors look for. So this is why we need to check these boxes, sort of things, and do things like that's essentially the bread and butter of our solution. So, and I'm just going to kind of walk through a little bit of that here. And so I kind of mentioned some of it, like deploying, like we've already done the vetting of like which VPNs are going to work. We know which VPNs are FIPS 140-2 validated. We know which ones, we know which alerting tools to use. We know, what vulnerability management. We understand. We've already, like I said, we've already done the work. We already have all the experience of doing this. So we can just pass that on to your customer and say, hey, let's just go to town and deploy all this stuff for you and give you the documentation and kind of speed it up. So and then hand it off to you. And we also do managed services as well if you need some with like a little bit more of a long-term engagement as well. A lot of our customers do end up getting managed services as well. But some of them just say, hey, get us through the door, we'll take it from there. And that's where a lot about what we do. Now, what a big part about what we do is what we call, and part of this implementation about what we do is what we call a landing zone. That if anybody's familiar with AWS, that is an official AWS term that we use that talks about account segmentation. So just like in any, so like every account, it's every environment, I should say, in AWS, like the old way of doing things was everything went into one single account. Like in an account in this term is essentially like a tenant, where it's like, okay, this is where all of our resources, all of our VMs, all of our S3 buckets, all of our networking, all of our Lambda functions, everything goes into this one account. And it worked good. It worked fine for a while. but what people started to realize was when you want to get into like role-based access and really start to like, it's a kind of a pain. And then you also talk about like bill track, like cost tracking. It's like, how do I know? It's like AWS has some tools for that with cost tracking, cost allocation tags. And they have some very granular permissions where they did a great job of that. But it's like, is there a way to build it so it's separate from default? So, and that's where so that's where they, a few years back, they started saying, hey, deploy everything in different accounts based on what the workload is. So, what we generally do is, and this is just very, very high level, the diagram that you see in front of us is, or maybe we'll create 3 different accounts. We'll create like a network access account. We'll create a ThreatAlert landing zone, which is kind of like, I don't know what it was that mentioned GSS, General Security Services. Or somebody mentioned that earlier. That's basically where the GSS stack. We actually use the term GSS. So that's why that's what we use in house. So that's why I caught you saying that. So we'll deploy the GSS account where a lot of all the stackArmor's tools will go in, and then we'll maybe have like a production account, which is where your application will go in. And that way, like, and there's different, like, a lot of this will be done and kind of, broken out and kind of decided on during like our initial discovery phase, where we kind of just talk about how your environment is going to be kind of built out. But so this is high level, I've worked with some customers that, due to some constraints, they're just in one, they still only use one account. We try to not do that, but, then I have other customers that have over 20 accounts just for one application. And, it gets, I've never worked in an environment like this, but I've talked with some organizations that have hundreds of AWS accounts for the different levels of separation with everything. And it's just, I won't get into all the details of that, but like it's fully customizable based on your own, based on what you guys are looking to accomplish. And again, that's something that we would kind of discuss during the discovery phase of everything. But so how this generally works is we would deploy like for lack of a better term, like your DMZ would go in the network access landing zone. That's where like your Palo Alto next gen firewalls, that's where that would go in that account. Any like some like the transit gateway, which is basically like a virtual router in the cloud, that would go in that account. A lot of we would deploy that in there. Then the ThreatAlert account, that's where like the ThreatAlert GSS account, that's where you're going to get like, that's where we deploy like Active Directory, where we would deploy like Nessus for like vulnerability scanning, Acunetics for application scanning, maybe SonarQube if you need static code analysis, Jira for POEM tracking and change management, like anything else. Like if you like need like a single sign-on solution, like for like Duo or Okta, any agents that would be that be deployed in order to kind of integrate the connectivity between Active Directory and Okta, that would go into that cloud as well. Like it's separate. So the idea would be that like you could, if somebody only needed access to the ThreatAlert to the GSS services, the GSS account, you could just grant them. You don't have to go get fancy with permissions. You just say, hey, you just give them access to that one account. You don't like that. You don't have to get down to the needs and create certain policies with crazy tagging strategies. Because it's separate by default. It's from the very beginning. So that's the benefit of that. So the auditors really like that. And again, this is in accordance with AWS best practices. This is what they like doing with everything, and how they see how they like the solutions and what they recommend, how they recommend doing everything. Now, in terms of the AT, like how we kind of do everything is, so like I said, and again, the 6 sprints, this is just kind of it. It's not set in stone. It's not like we're going to say this will be done in 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever. This is just kind of like a high level diagram about how this kind of works. Well, initially we'll launch that. We'll go in there and launch the AWS landing zone where we'll set up the different accounts. We'll create the accounts baselines, like your networking, your different audit trails, or your hook, your AWS config rules to kind of check to see, make sure that you're deploying infrastructure that's in a compliant fashion. We'll set up that's step one. Then we'll start to deploy our actual services. We're all kind of like our SIEMs, our vulnerability scanners, anything anything along those lines. We'll go in there and deploy everything like that. Then we'll talk about along that same time, during that same time, that's when you're also going to be deploying your application in the cloud, and we'll guide you with some of that and kind of answer some of your questions about the best way to do that, to get past the auditors and everything like that, and can make sure it integrates well with our security stack. Then obviously hardening and scanning it, every part of a FedRAMP, like you can say, hey, our servers are hardened. The auditors want to see proof. They always want to see, give us a report from Nessus or Saint or something, whatever, Rapid7, whichever tool that you're familiar with in terms of scanning. They'll scan, and any critical and high vulnerabilities, we remediate, scan again, and hand it off to the auditors. That's during that set. And then all along that whole process, we're filling out all the different, we're helping you with the SSPs and help our compliance teams working with people like me, the architects and the engineers, to make sure that everything is documented properly and with screenshots and everything. So it kind of takes, not going to say there's no headache, there's still headaches, but I'd like to think that we really greatly reduce the number of headaches that come along with that. Then that's when you start to go, we hand you off to the 3PAO, the third party assessing organization. That's kind of like, they're not officially a part of they're not officially like related to the federal government and the ATO process, but they kind of are. They're like a third party that'll come in there and stand and say, and look at your ATO package and say, and make sure all your ducks are in lines. Basically, if you get through 3PAO assessment, it's a 99.99% chance that you're gonna get through the JAB board, the Joint Authorization Board, and actually end up getting your authority to operate. So that's where that's part of that process. And we work with a lot of different 3PAOs and so if you need help picking different ones, we can help you along with which ones that you might want to use, or which ones we've had experience with. So we can definitely help in that regard too. And after that long, arduous process, that's when we start to hopefully that's when hopefully you get your ATO, and then you can actually start to make money and do business with the government. So that's a lot of our process here. Now, in terms of some of like our security platform, so where we come in is, and this is kind of just talks about some of our different tools, where you have like your POAM management, where we actually have some tools that we have built that in-house that comes a part of our ThreatAlert stack. It's actually called ThreatAlert. That's why we call it. That's why our offering is called the ThreatAlert ATO acceleration. The product is called ThreatAlert, where it tracks a lot of your AWS environment, and it can create, like, it scans your AWS environment, like the actual AWS infrastructure, and says, okay, these are the things that you need to fix, and these are like, and it integrates with Jira or any of your other different change management tools, and where you can create POAMs and based on and have a POAM created, put it in Jira so you can track it, because that's one of the things that auditors look for is, you say you're tracking all these changes, you say that, prove it. Where are you tracking all these changes? Where are you doing all this heavy work? Prove it to us. And so you need to have a track record in whatever system you're using. We generally use Jira, and where it shows all the tickets that you've had open, the closing and everything over the process of deploying this whole environment, and that's why our tool, where our personal tools kind of help out with that, is that it helps establish that track record of where things are and how things have been established along the line. It shows, hey, these people have been deploying the services. They have been they have been remediating things and tracking everything, and that's where this is. So that's where we talk about that. So in terms of like security incident and event management, like maybe we'll use a product like Splunk, because anybody who's used Splunk knows that it does just about everything that you want it to. It gobbles up all your logs from everything, indexes them, makes them pretty so you can look at them, and it can automate a lot of your finding different things and notifying the right people. Hey, there's a security incident here, or this service just went down. So Splunk is our bread and butter for doing a lot of stuff that for working along for identifying a lot of those things. And I guess another one of the big plugs about it is, since a lot of the services that we do use on a traditional, like a lot of the companies that we do business with that are part of our stack, we do get some discounts if you go through us. So that's another one of the benefits of that, is like, I'm not going to say how much of a discount or what it is, but generally speaking, we try to, we since we are able to get some bundled deals with, we can maybe pass some stuff on to the customer as well, which nobody's ever going to complain about, right? So that's pretty much it from that standpoint. I mean, we have like I said, it's a lot to cover in there. I look forward to answering some of your questions about everything. One thing I will say, if at all this seemed interesting to you and you would like to kind of get more information about the ATO process, and specifically stackArmor, we are actually having a workshop on October 28th. It's going to be during business hours, on 1 to 3 p.m. So anybody that's be interested in that, and that's going to be run by our CEO, and I believe also our Chief Solutions Officer, Martin Rieger, who actually has a lot of experience working with the 3PAO at a 3PAO organization. Really smart guy. So they'll be able to kind of talk a little bit more. And so if anybody who's interested more and wants to learn more about obviously ask me some questions, but I would highly, highly recommend attending this event. You can contact, if you like, you can get the information right here off of LinkedIn. You can look for us at stackArmor. Just look on LinkedIn, or you can, contact CL, or you can contact me on LinkedIn, and we can get you that information, anything that just, if that's something you'd be interested in. So with that, if anybody has any questions or comments, I would be glad to kind of try to answer them and try to shed some light on that. Not all at once.
You were on mute the whole time.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Matt, can you start over?
This is Joe. You mentioned Splunk, but do you also work with any of the other SIEM products like Datadog or Elk?
We have used Elk before with some of our other customers. Never used Datadog. One of the newer things that AWS is kind of pushing is their new product called Security Hub as well, which is kind of like AWS's SIEM as a service. So that's one thing that we're looking to start working a lot with. But like I said, the reason why we use Splunk is, number one, we're familiar with it. It's a more or less a standard in terms of in the SIEM as a SIEM product, but also we know that it will work with FIPS when you enable FIPS 140-2 encryption. So I'm not saying that other products won't. We just know that this one 100% does. If that makes sense. And it's annoying, but some auditors, like, and a lot of auditors, it's like that's a deal breaker if not every little product is a FIPS 140-2 validated.
If no one else has any other questions, I did have one more. One of the challenges that we're running into as we're moving into a hybrid environment with multi-cloud tenant environments is vulnerability scanning. Currently, we were using Tenable SC.
Yep.
As you know, there's a lot of work to get it to work with multi-cloud environments, but Tenable IO still hasn't been FedRAMP.
Yep.
What are some common cloud vulnerability scanning tools that you've seen in the field?
So when you say, so are you talking about specifically, because like, let's make sure we're speaking the same language. Are you talking about like OS level scanning, or are you talking about like scanning my actual, like my cloud infrastructure, like my EC2 instances, the security groups, the S3 buckets, my EBS volumes, like, is that what you're talking? Are you talking about that, or are you talking about
Yes.
more OS level? So you're talking about the actual cloud configuration.
Yes. Yes.
So okay.
That's separate from the AWS tools.
Yeah. So one thing I would say is our tool. Well, here's a good way to plug ourselves. Our tool leverages a lot of the AWS native tools and kind of ingests them and puts them in a nice, easy to read format. Like, it's one of the problems is that there's 40 different services, and it's like, oh God, now that I have to look at 40 different dashboards about all this stuff. So our ThreatAlert stack actually does that and makes it nice for you with that, but it does leverage the native AWS tools, services to do that. It just grabs the data from AWS and eats it. One that I'm personally aware of, just because they're a partner of ours, Palo Alto, they have a product called Prisma, which does something pretty similar. They don't leverage AWS native services, and it is multi-cloud. Our product is multi-cloud as well. It was written in a way that it would work in Azure as well. But Prisma does work in Azure, GCP. And it doesn't leverage like the native services in there. It leverages Palo Alto's own built in-house engine to make those checks, if that makes sense. But one of the nice things that I would say about our platform is we have a built-in like cost tracking tools that tracks a lot of like your costs, and Palo Alto's does not do that. They would prefer you get that solution from somebody else. Ours comes built in with a cost tracking that says, hey, this is how much you're spending, and it takes a lot of the data from the AWS billing data. It takes all that data and parses it and makes it easy to read and filterable, so you can kind of play around with it and really get some good information about where you're spending your money in your cloud. So does that make sense?
Yes, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Who was it that had the question about POAMs with SSPs and
that was me.
Oh, that was you. Did I answer your question?
Not yet. Not yet. I was still waiting.
Okay. So I'll take a stab at it if I understand it properly. So I would, generally speaking, and again, your experience might be different at least, but every system that we built, like the entire environment that we build is well, like, I guess what we call the system or whatever. All this, like, that would be tied to the entire SSP. So all the POAMs would be tied to the SSP. Now, I'm not sure what you meant by like, is the POAM tied to the system? If it's like individual components of like an individual subsystem within that entire infrastructure, is that what you meant by that? Or
Right. So oftentimes the SSP is assigned to the environment, but not the systems.
Yeah,
So
okay.
what happens is you have, especially in a hybrid environment, they're using different components of that one system. And so the impact for it, you have to work with two separate devs at the same time to
Yeah.
coordinate the remediation of that plan.
Yeah. So the way the way I look at it is whenever you're looking for FedRAMP, there's something called like the boundary of the system, which is, and you're probably familiar with this, which is like, what is every component within the system? Whether it's, if there's like, if your Active Directory or something is still sitting in a data center and you have like an AWS Direct Connect or a site-to-site VPN between your AWS infrastructure and Active Directory to talk, like if that your data center then, or at least the Active Directory with like in all the components within there, like the VMs, like the actual physical blades that are hosting your like the Active Directory, that actually becomes part of like the actual boundary at that point. So it's the same thing as if you're using like a SaaS product like Okta for FedRAMP, you need to use that also becomes a part of your boundary, because technically Okta's services, Okta's platform is integrated with your platform. So so that's where it extends within the boundary of that. Now, one of the nice things about the FedRAMP, and it's a good thing they do this, is you do inherit another environments or another systems FedRAMP ATO authorization. So if you use Okta's FedRAMP tenant, FedRAMP environment, you automatically inherit it. So you don't have to, you can just, if there's any questions about that, you can say that it's inherited and document how that's done. Now, one of the challenges that we've seen with, and this may or may not answer your question, is just kind of like our own, just one thing that we've done is a lot of our solutions, almost all of our solutions actually, are built are in boundary deployments. We try not to leverage too much SaaS. And the reason behind that is just like kind of what we're getting at was with the boundary, it allows us to define the boundary a little bit more clearly. And say, okay, everything, it's all the VMs are inside this VPC or our AWS environment. So therefore, that's what the boundary is, or like it limits the scope of the boundary. But also what happens is a lot of customers, it allows us to kind of take the same approach and make it a little bit more agile. If a customer wants to go for like a higher level of compliance, and we don't have to like re-architect the whole entire system, what I mean by that is, let's say you get a FedRAMP moderate authorization and we deploy everything and it meets FedRAMP moderate, but all of a sudden you want to go for, CMMC high or FedRAMP high. A lot of tools, just because they're FedRAMP moderate authorized, does not mean that they're FedRAMP high authorized.
Right.
So you have to, so then if you're highly reliant on SaaS or a lot of things, you have to throw a lot of those solutions out and you have to re-architect everything. So that's why we try to start from, we try to favor in boundary a little bit more from that. Is it more annoying? Yes. Is it a little bit more work? Yeah, but it will save you some headaches in the long run if your plan is to kind of go to a higher level of authorization. So sorry if I know that last piece was not maybe directly tied to that, but maybe that got the juices flowing for you.
No. I totally understand. I'm going through that right now with our box instance, because we have to have a box FSMA low, box FSMA high. I understand exactly what you mean.
Yep. It's a sticky process. Like, it's not it's annoying. It's sometimes it's like, as the gearhead in me, I'm just like, I just want to deploy stuff and make it work. And, I want it to be pretty and all this stuff, but it's just like, the auditors and the compliance guys are like, stop, you have to kind of reel it in. So definitely understand.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other, does anybody have any other questions or comments? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, hello, this is Neil. I guess maybe along similar lines there. And thank you for sharing your sentiments on the processes. I still have some lines in my forehead, just even being on the periphery of some of this stuff. But have you seen, getting more to the point here, have you seen anything like the Open Security Controls Assessment Language, OSCL, or the Red Hat alternative gaining any traction? Something that will help us move away from like Word documents and Excel spreadsheets, or are we stuck in that world?
To be honest, I know what you're talking about, and I can't really say. I know that there are some developments in terms of getting it and templatizing it a little bit more and making it a little bit more so it can be like more like driven with automated tools, so you can like in terms of OSCAP, because I know I've talked with our CEO about implementing some of that into our security stack, but I can't comment on that too much. I can tell you that I guess this is another one of our shameless plugs. If you could attend I'm sure the CEO, you can always email us and the email I showed before and ask us the question, or you can attend this they might cover that, and I'm sure the CEO would be able to comment on that better. So sorry, it's just not something I can comment on.
Oh, no worries at all. Thanks for taking a shot there. Well, here's another one just totally off the hip, and it's really off on a tangent a little bit, but as far as stackArmor goes, do you guys have any preference on infrastructure as code tools like CloudFormation, Census, AWS centric, or Terraform? Any preference?
So great question. I know a lot of people say prefer Terraform because it is cloud agnostic and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. stackArmor, and it's just kind of due to our strategic partnership with AWS, we stick with a lot more CloudFormation because a lot of our tools are in their marketplace, and in order for it to be in AWS's marketplace, it has to be in an AWS native format like CloudFormation. But it's not new, but it's something that we're looking to adopt here more at stackArmor now, is a tool called CDK, AWS CDK, Cloud Development Kit. Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with that, it's essentially a wrapper for different, for CloudFormation, for different levels of for different languages like Python or Node.js or something like that, where you could actually write a Python script for your environment, and it would dynamically generate a CloudFormation template and then deploy it into your environment. And now the nice thing about that is, at first you're like, why would I write? I already know how to write CloudFormation. I beat my head up against the wall for a year to learn the syntax and all the weirdness about it. Why would I start learning Python? And the reason is because you can start to abstract out a lot of the layers of the automation. You can leverage some looping. There's a lot in some general like features of like a traditional coding language, like looping and while loops, like and different conditions, and use those in your CloudFormation templates and abstract that off. And obviously a lot more developers are going to know how to write a Python script more than like a CloudFormation template. So I would, if you're still in a green field and you have some people who have the Python chops, I would or Node.js. I just say Python just because that's I don't know Node.js. But if I would tell you to look strongly into the CDK, because it is going to give you a little bit like that happy marriage of the two. Of like being a little more friendly to developers while still being AWS native, but also the AWS is releasing and they're writing it for other systems as well. Like they released essentially a CDK for Kubernetes. So like where now you could actually write like your entire Kubernetes manifests in Python and deploy it in the exact same way. So you can integrate everything. So if like, let's just say you're deploying you deploy a Kubernetes application and you're using EKS, you can use CDK to launch your EKS clusters and define all your everything within that framework. And then you use the Kubernetes CDK, what I think it's called CDKs, framework to deploy your Kubernetes and write everything in Python and boom, deploy right there. And so it'll kind of give you it, they're building on it to make it a little more friendly. Whereas the benefit of using Terraform is that like there's already a lot of modules for that. So like, and you can do the same thing with Terraform right out of the gate. So I'm just, like if you're all over the place and there's no tools for you, you're probably gonna have to use Terraform. And there's no like other, there's no like happy medium for it. But if you are in a world, I would strongly recommend looking at CDK and a lot of that stuff. So.
Thank you very much for that. And thanks again for the talk. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Anything else, guys?
Well, it looks like there's no more questions out there. I wanted to, Matt, thank you. I want to thank you, Matt. It was an excellent presentation. Well, your breadth of knowledge, it's just incredible. It's not just breadth, it's also depth as well. I want to let everybody know that I put stackArmor's workshop in our group chat. I also put Matt's LinkedIn in our group chat as well, so you can stay in touch with him. And please consider singing his praise. We have another meetup tomorrow night. It's called You Can Be an Automation Superhero with the Power Platform. That's Microsoft's Power Platform. Hope you can join us on that as well. It's in the Microsoft 365 global user group. But really appreciate you guys attending, and hope you guys can attend many more.
Yep. Thank you guys. It was a real pleasure sharing with you guys. And like CL said, feel free to reach out, and hopefully we'll see you guys at some of our one of our workshops in the next couple of weeks. So have a good night, guys.
Great job.
All right, thanks, Matthew.
Thank you.